My next guest, he won't talk about his influence on the NFL, but I'll tell you, his influence is loud, and it seems to be coming like clearer and clearer, especially over the last couple of days. We had a Super Bowl in which he won in the city of Detroit. Then all of a sudden, Detroit hosts a draft. And then, oh, by the way, the Pittsburgh area will now host another NFL draft. Well, their first NFL draft in 2026. The influence of Jerome Bettis is right here in front of us, and he joins the Rich Eisen Show right now, courtesy of Air Serve. Jerome, just tell me, first of all, I got the news that Pittsburgh will be hosting. They will be hosting an NFL draft in 2026. Just talk about what the people will see when the draft comes to Pittsburgh.
Well, I believe the people and the whole country will see an incredible football town, people rabid about their team. And then because it's in Pittsburgh, you're going to have all the other teams, their craziest fans are going to come into Pittsburgh to try to show that they are the best fans. It's going to be hard to do, I promise you, because I don't think there's any better football fans than in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So it's going to be an incredible draft. Detroit, I got a chance to be there. It was phenomenal. I do believe, though, that Pittsburgh will go to another level.
Oh, I bet they will. And I know we'll see Jerome Bettis all over the place because you will be in a high demand in Pittsburgh come NFL Draft 2026. But speaking of draft, there's a bigger draft, I think, that comes up, especially as we get closer to the beginning of the NFL season. That's the fantasy football draft. And I know that Air Servers, they're going to be hosting an ultimate fantasy draft, and you'll be a part of it, man. Jerome, first of all, tell me about the ultimate draft party with Air Serve and how you will be helping them out.
Yeah, it's called the Air Serve Ultimate Fantasy Football Draft Party. It's going to be in Nashville. It's going to be August the 10th. Just first and foremost, you can go to airserve.com/fantasy draft to register. It's going to be one of those events that you just don't want to miss. It's going to be really special. I'm excited about it because I've become a huge fantasy football fan. When I was playing,
right,
hated it because people used to get mad at me because, if I get on the 1 yard line, get it to the one, then Cordell Stewart would jump over the pile and I would lose the touchdown. And they get mad at me, and I'm like, couldn't call the play. And so I always thought that it was tough because of on me, but now as a fan, I absolutely love it.
When you mentioned getting involved in fantasy football, do you know when you started? What brought you to the fantasy football space?
That's a good question. It was just enjoying the game, and obviously the way I watched the game, I watched players. Obviously, having played for Pittsburgh, I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. But then I like individual players, right? And so it gave me the ability to follow individual players without having to support their football team, And so I just thought that was the perfect scenario that I could follow, the running backs or follow the wide receiver and kind of root for them without having to root for the team.
We're speaking with the Hall of Famer, Jerome Bettis, here on the Rich Eisen Show. Kirk Morrison here filling in for Rich. And Jerome, look, I don't know your thoughts when it does come to a fantasy football draft. I know the position that you played at a really, really high level. So when it comes to drafting in that first round and Jerome Bettis is on the clock, are you going wide receiver? Are you going running back? What position are you leading to come fantasy football draft time?
It's tough. It depends. Here's what it depends on. First of all, it depends on where you picking in the draft, right? That's the first one, right? Because I think there's, 2 or 3 guys. First of all, you want to look at the top 2 or 3 running backs, and then the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks, and the top 2 or 3 receivers, right? All of them really are interchangeable, but you would love to get those that top running back or a quarterback who's going to run and who's going to score some touchdowns on the ground. So it's really a question of where you're picking in the draft, because if I'm picking really high, then I know I can get my running back, one of the top running backs, and I'm going for running back. You better believe it. And if I'm in the middle of the draft, I'm probably going to try to get one of the top receivers if they're still available. If I'm picking at the bottom of the first round, then I'm probably going to try to get my quarterback, because those guys run off the board pretty quick. So I'll probably try to get my quarterback and then double back and get the receiver next and then the running back.
Jerome, I mentioned that you're here with AirServe, an industry leader in HVAC and indoor air quality services. And I know this is something that you've been really passionate about, especially quality of air, something that you dealt with obviously in your career. And it's something that you really, in your post-career, have really stood on, making sure that people understand what the quality of air has been. So for you, tell us about the campaign and how you're ensuring that we're all breathing clean air, Jerome.
So when I went out to play football as a kid, I was asthmatic and I didn't know it. And so, I was traumatized, had to go to the doctor and everything. And so when I started working with AirServe, a neighborly company, it allowed me to now have a voice and say, listen, guys, you have to understand there are issues in your own home that are working against you. And a lot of times, people don't realize that you have, the dead skin from yourself, from the animal pets, if you have pets, the dust. And so there's so much that's in your home that's working against you. You need a company kind of, like AirServe that can come in and help you, but also help you maintain your systems that are in place, because it's nothing like having good air to breathe. And from a person who struggles at times to breathe, good air is, you don't realize how special it is until you don't have it. And so that's why it's given me an opportunity to really talk to people, really one-on-one, and let them know, hey, you need to be more conscious about the air quality in your own home.
Jerome, speaking of air, it's new air, or maybe era, in the National Football League with Roger Goodell. Didn't say it just yet, but when I hear the NFL is possibly thinking about expanding to 18 games, and I'm thinking to my mind, wow, we thought 16 was a lot. Then we got to 17, and there was gripes about 17, but that's what happens. You go through a couple seasons and we forget about it. But now the possibility of 18 games, how do you see the NFL navigating to 18 games? And is there some concessions that you have to have in order to get to 18 games for player safety?
Yeah, there are some concessions that you got to get to. You got to open up that roster. You've got to have more positions, because in an 18-game season, you're inviting more injury into play, right? Before you even get to the playoffs. So now you need to have more bodies that you can now put into a football game where you don't stress out a football player's body, because really it wasn't designed to play one, much less 16, now 17, and possibly 18. So I think if you enlarge that roster, allow for more players, that gives the teams a little bit more leeway and not running down your star players. Now you are able to finish out a full year and be healthy enough to go into the playoffs, because at the end of the day, it's about the playoffs. But if you can't get to the playoffs without being injured, what is it all for? So I think teams the NFL first has to understand really the pressure that's put on each player from a physical standpoint. Now you open up that, you give them more opportunity, which entails gives more players opportunities as well. So I just think you have to, open up that roster, put more guys on there.
We're talking to the Super Bowl champion, the Hall of Famer, Jerome Bettis, here on the Rich Eisen Show with Kirk Morrison here. I'm filling in for Rich. The one thing that I was just kind of thinking about is that over years past, we know the Mike Tomlin resume, right? Since he's been the head coach in Pittsburgh, he's never had a losing season, right? And I get it. And then this may be the most trying season upcoming with having, 8 games against playoff teams and divisional opponents in the last 11 weeks of the season. But then on top of that, there's new quarterbacks inside of that locker room in Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. Just from what you may have heard, what you may have seen, Jerome, what's your outlook on the Pittsburgh Steelers of 2024?
I'm excited about the Steelers in 2024. I just think, you got 2 quarterbacks who are hungry. Both guys have something to prove. Both guys want to be out there, running the show. And that's a beautiful thing, because I believe when you have that type of competition on a daily basis, it's going to do nothing but help your football team. Because if these players see their quarterbacks in this battle, what do you think it's going to do for those other individual battles, for those other positions? Those guys are going to raise their level, right, to meet the level of the quarterbacks. And so whichever the quarterback they do decide on, I think you're going to get the best version of that quarterback. So I'm excited. The one thing the Steelers have been missing was really, really high-level quarterback play. And I think both of these guys have the ability to provide that. So if you mix that in with an outstanding defense, incredible pass rush, great running game, now you've got a championship caliber football team. And I think that's what I think the potential is, a championship caliber football team with high level quarterback play.
Last couple minutes with you, Jerome, because a question I was kind of looking at throughout football in terms of the running back position. I saw that Najee Harris didn't get the 5th-year option with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They also have Jaylen Warren on the roster as well. But I look around the National Football League and the position that you played, and so many people loved watching you play, but we knew the importance of what a Jerome Bettis type player meant to an offense, meant to a defense as well, having to go up against you. But you look at the NFL now, and the running back position is just not the same. The money's not the same. How would you describe it? And is there a way to improve what once used to be a commodity that you have to have? Now it just seems like it's a rotational piece, and no one wants to invest in that position.
Yeah, the problem has been college football. So when you look at college football and where it went, 15 years ago, what happened was you started to see teams go to 3, 4 wide receivers every play. And then the quarterback went from under center to now, every play is a shotgun play. Right. Well, now it's more 60-40 throwing the football to running the football, or 70-30, if you will. And what you've seen now is a different type of running back. In college, you got a shorter, smaller running back that's quicker, because the holes aren't the same way. It's not a punishing style of football. So now you don't need that big running back. Well, the problem is, in the NFL, they still want a big running back. And so you can't find them. So now it's hard to really go out and get that first round running back because he's not there, right? Mm-hmm. But you do have 3 receivers on every team. So now you're getting this influx of wide receivers that are coming in. So I expect to see every year somewhere like, 5, 6 receivers getting drafted in the first round, because they're going to be plentiful. Well, the problem is you don't have the running backs. So the running backs are going to become an issue because you're not going to have the quality there. And that's why they're going with running back by committee, because you just don't have those bell cows that can be stars. But when you do find one, then you sign them. And I think that's what the Eagles did. They found one. They said, hey, we're going to get them. They got them, and they're going to be better for it. So there's still a need for the running back position. You just can't really find them.
Well, I'll tell you this. I know if I'm drafting behind you in the Air Serve Ultimate Fantasy Football Draft Party, the top-rated running back may be off the board after Jerome Bettis goes up into the draft, man. Jerome, man, I appreciate the time. Thank you. And look, you'll be co-hosting the Air Serve Ultimate Fantasy Football Draft Party. Go to www.airserve.com/fantasy draft. Hey, Jerome, always appreciate the time, my man. Thank you.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.